Not many Americans have actually run through the caucus system in Iowa. Explain the process. I mean, for example, how many people do you think you've met with at this point?
Well, David, just so you know, my aunt and uncle are from Iowa. So I've been coming here since I was 2 years old to see them and my 4 first cousins. The organization I started, Next Gen America, has been organizing in Iowa since the beginning of 2014. So I've been coming here professionally. Next Gen is on 41 campuses in the state of Iowa. So I've been coming here to register young people, to go door to door, to go to town halls for 7 or 8 years. So I've met thousands of Iowans over the years. As running for president, I've been coming here, and my whole goal is to sit and see as many Iowans face to face and have a conversation, hear what they're saying to me. I love to take questions at town halls and see what's on people's minds and what's going on here in the state of Iowa.
Having observed the process, the primary process in Iowa through all those elections, is it different this time? Are people more engaged than they have been in the past?
Well, I think, David, this is going to be the generational election where we turn the page on this failed Republican experiment that started with Ronald Reagan and has reached its ignominious conclusion with Donald Trump. I think we're going to know it because the turnout's going to be off the charts and Americans are going to show up to say this has to end. So I think this year is really different because I think everybody knows there's so much at stake that everybody has to show up, everybody has to participate, and we really do have to end this absolutely failed Republican regime.
And from the beginning, as I've listened to you, you've been on the subject of real structural change, not just around the edges, but structural change in the Republic. Do you think that your fellow Democratic candidates share that view? Do the other leading candidates really want structural change?
Well, look, I'm an outsider, David. I've spent 10 years putting together coalitions of American citizens to fight unchecked corporate power as an outsider. And by the way, we've never lost. But I have no allegiance to the structure of Washington, D.C. That government is broken. It's been bought by corporations. So when I say I want 12-year term limits for every congressperson and senator, that's what I want, and I believe that's what the American people want. But if you're a career politician from Washington, D.C., the last thing you want to even talk about is term limits. I want direct democracy to let the people pass their own laws. I want to change Washington, D.C. because it's broken and corporations are having their way with the American people. I think if you're an insider, if you're a career politician, you have some allegiance to the structure. You think you can make this failed structure work. And what we're seeing is that's not true.
So if it's not an insider, that eliminates a lot of the leading candidates right, for Democratic candidate for president. At the same time, you really want Donald Trump out of office. Is there any candidate that you would have trouble supporting if they actually got the nomination instead of you?
David, I've said from the very beginning, the first thing I said on the debate stage was everyone on this stage is 1,000,000 times better than Donald Trump. And I've said, I want to be the candidate because I believe I can beat Donald Trump. I believe I can take him down on what he says he's good at, which is the economy. But as someone who built a business from scratch, I can reveal him as the fake and the fraud and the failure that he is as a business person and as a steward of the American economy. But if it's not going to be me, I'll support any Democrat without any questions because they're all 1,000,000 times better.
Including Bernie Sanders or including Elizabeth Warren.
Absolutely, without any qualms whatsoever. Look, we have to beat Mr. Trump in the fall. That means a couple of things. It means you're going to have to appeal to a diverse group of Americans. We have a very diverse country, and we have a very diverse Democratic Party. Whoever is going to be the Democratic nominee has got to be able to appeal to that diverse group of Americans and bring them to the polls. That's something, actually, if you look at the 4 early primary states, I can do. If you look at Nevada and South Carolina, I'm doing really well. I got the endorsement today of the Iowa, Nebraska head of the NAACP. If you're going to beat Donald Trump, you're going to have to beat him on the economy, and you're going to have to draw a diverse group of Americans to the polls to say, this is an absolute failed experiment. It's imperative that we turn the page on Mr. Trump and his whole band of Republicans.
If diversity is the goal for the Democratic Party, is Iowa not necessarily the strongest state to start in? Because Iowa is not a very diverse state.
It's funny. Iowans take their role as the first state incredibly seriously. They do an amazing job of doing their homework. They really do. And being sophisticated and meeting candidates and reading up. And the other thing that Iowans know is they know that the candidate they support is going to have that diverse support. they know that if they're supporting someone who can't do that, that in effect they're supporting someone who either can't be the candidate or who can't beat Mr. Trump. And Iowans are sophisticated enough and smart enough to know that. So I think that Iowa's the first state, and they really do an amazing job.
What are the issues that are resonating in your experience? As you say, you've talked to thousands of people from Iowa now. What are the issues that seem to resonate with them?
Well, let me say this. Number one is you got to beat Mr. Trump. I'm the only person in this race who will say that he or she's number one priority is climate. That we have to basically treat climate as the crisis that it is. I declare a state of emergency on day one, but I do it from the standpoint of environmental justice. It will create over 4.5 million good-paying union jobs across the country. And in fact, we would partner with the Iowa farmers to actually figure out how to take carbon out of the air and put it into the soil, something that they're experts in and that we would pay them handsomely for doing. So I think Iowans are responding to a whole set of progressive issues. But my point is this: we can't get any of them. We can't get affordable health care as a right. We can't get quality public education starting with universal preschool. We can't get clean air and clean water as a right, or a living wage, until we break this corporate stranglehold. And that's why I talk about it so much, David, because these corporations own the government. Until we break that corporate stranglehold, we're not going to get what the vast bulk of Americans and Democrats want. And once we do, we're going to get everything. And so that's the job. Break the corporate stranglehold, return the government to the people of the United States.
Long before you ran for president, long before you actually focused on Donald Trump and the possible impeachment of Donald Trump, you were focused on the climate issues.
Yes.
I mean, you're identified with that particularly. You said that would be a number one priority for you as president of the United States. Do the people of Iowa think that should be the number one priority, or do they have a different number one priority?
Actually, the funny thing is the people of Iowa know it's true. They absolutely, this has been a state where we have had abnormal flooding for a decade, where in fact these are a group of people who are very close to the land. So in fact, this is a leading issue for people in Iowa, and they appreciate the fact that I'm the only person who's made it his or her number one priority. I think the other issues that people are talking about, of course people care about healthcare. And Mr. Trump has said that he's going to pay for that tax cut that he gave to the richest Americans and the biggest corporations by going after people's health care. So I think that Iowans know that it's absolutely critical to get a Democrat in who will protect health care and extend health care and drive down the cost of health care, and not allow Mr. Trump to get in there again and go after their health care, and in particular go after pre-existing conditions. I mean, this is a guy who really is bad for Americans.
In the midterm elections, I think it's fair to say the Democrats were seen as the protectors of health care, particularly Obamacare, and the Democrats did well in the House of Representatives in large part because of that. In this election so far, the Democrats got off on a bit of a different tangent with respect to whether we have private insurance or not, and Medicare for all or not. Do you believe the people in Iowa believe the Democratic Party is the place to turn to right now to protect health care?
Absolutely. David, honestly, I don't think there's any question. I think we've seen, you might not know this, but in Iowa, the Republican government privatized Medicaid, and the result's been a disaster. I think the Republican Party traditionally in Iowa, in Washington, D.C., and around the country has a straightforward formula that punishes American citizens, which is cut taxes on rich people and big corporations, and then pay for it by cutting education costs, K through 12 and higher ed, and go after people's health care. And so I think everybody in Iowa knows that true. I don't think there's any question in this race which party is good on the healthcare issue. I think the real question is, can we make healthcare better before we break the corporate stranglehold that includes the drug companies and the insurance companies and the private hospitals? And I don't think there's any question we have to break that corporate stranglehold in order to improve and build on the Affordable Care Act.
If the overall number one goal is to make sure Donald Trump is not in the White House for another 4 years, if that is the overall goal, aren't you playing from behind given where the economy is? There's a general perception, there's a lot of job creation, inflation is low, unemployment is low, and traditionally an incumbent president does not lose with those kinds of economic numbers.
David, that's why I want to be the nominee. Because that actually what you're saying is not true. Is it a strong economy if it's growing, but all of the additional income goes to the richest Americans and the biggest corporations?
Well, but real wages are going up for the
But
lowest quartile.
if you look at what's happened, you're saying we have low unemployment. People can't afford to live on the wages that this economy produces. People are having to hold down 2 and 3 jobs. If you look at really what's going on in the United States of America, this president gave the biggest tax cut in history to the richest Americans and the biggest corporations. If you look at the rates, we have a regressive tax structure. Rich people pay a lower percentage of their income in taxes than working people. That is absolutely unjust. The biggest corporations have an average tax rate of 11%. That is a crazy low number. The fact of the matter is, this is a president who is running an economy for the people at Mar-a-Lago, and the working Americans are getting absolutely left behind. And he said in his second term, he's going to balance the budget that he blew up with his tax cut for rich people by going after entitlements, namely people's health care spending. This is a guy who's been terrible for working Americans.
Let's take all of that at face value and say that's absolutely true.
It is true.
But then do the Democrats have a communications problem? Because if you look at the polling right now, people give Donald Trump a lot of credit on the economy. They think the economy is doing well, and they give him credit for it. So is there a communications problem with all the campaigning going on out in Iowa, New Hampshire, places like that? I'm not sure the American people are hearing what you're saying.
Well, let me say this. That's why I want to be the candidate. Whoever's going to win, Mr. Trump's running on the economy. You know it. He says it every single day. I think 2 nights ago, he was in Des Moines and he said, if I don't win, your farms are going to go to hell. I mean, he doesn't have to have any logic or reason behind it. Actually, he's been a terrible president for farmers. Absolutely terrible with his trade war and his waivers for oil refineries in terms of biofuels. He's been a terrible president for Iowa farmers. But he sits there and brags, and maybe people believe him. But he's a fake. He's always been a fake and a liar. He was a fake and a liar as a business person, and he's a fake and a liar as a president of the United States for the American people.
And to that point, for some time, you have thought that President Trump should be impeached. And you've taken various runs at that in various ways, including with trying to get members of the House of Representatives elected in the off-year election who would impeach him. He got impeached, and it looks like he's about to get acquitted in the Senate. Having gone through all of that, is President Trump weaker or stronger as a result of all the impeachment efforts?
Well, I think the entire Republican Party is weaker, including Mr. Trump. Because what the American people have seen, the majority of Americans want him removed from office. But beyond that, the Republican Party has tried to hold a trial and refused to have witnesses. That is absolutely against their oath of office. They've absolutely given up on the Constitution and the American people, and everybody knows it. Have you ever heard in your life of a trial where the defense got to say there are no witnesses? And have you ever heard of a trial where the jury is the senators and they're acting like they're the defense team? They have given up on their oath, and I think everybody in the United States can see that this Republican Party has put that party and their partisanship ahead of the country. It's dead wrong, and there's no way that that's a good advertisement for anybody, because it's plain to see what I've asked for and what the 8.5 million people in the Need to Impeach petition have asked for is put the evidence under oath of the people in the administration testifying on TV to the American people. And the Republican Party has tried to hide the evidence, to absolutely destroy, to make this a sham, fake trial. And it looks like they're going to succeed. But I'm just saying, they think this is about the senators in Washington, D.C. I've never thought that. I have always thought the jury that counts is the people of the United States. And what they've said is, to heck with the people of the United States, to heck with the Constitution. All we care about is ourselves and our party. And I can't believe, David, I mean, you're an American citizen. Let me ask you, how does that sit with you?
Well, you say the American people want President Trump removed from office. The polling actually shows it right around 50%.
Just over.
Well, it depends on which poll you have, but
Fair.
to call witnesses 75%, absolutely right. But to actually remove him from office, around 50%. Should we be removing a president of the United States on a 51-49
Well, David,
plurality?
The number wouldn't be 51-49 if we had witnesses.
What
point.
What would they tell us we don't know?
We would get to hear from the horse's mouth the truth under oath, or tell the truth or go to jail. You're old enough, I don't mean to be rude.
No, I'm old enough.
You're old enough
however that ends, it's true.
to remember the Nixon,
Yes, I
the
do.
Watergate. Things came out in testimony that nobody knew would come out. The thing that really sank Richard Nixon was the tapes.
Yes, Mr. Butterfield.
That came
and we didn't
out
expect it.
under oath when someone was being questioned by the Senate Watergate Committee. So the question you're saying is, Tom, what would come out that we don't know? Well, the answer is we don't know. And that's why you have testimony under oath. So in fact, what we've seen is Republicans scared, terrified to have the American people in their party, in the Democratic Party, and independents find out the truth about the most corrupt president in history. That is a terrible precedent, but it is absolutely consistent with the way they've behaved. And let me say this, for all the people who are running for president as Democrats who say we're going to meet in the middle, my personality is so terrific that I'm going to be able to compromise with the Republicans. Let me ask you where they are now. We have a party that won't agree to witnesses in a trial. And for all the Democrats who say we can meet in the middle, you know, the Vice President Biden and Mayor Buttigieg and Senator Klobuchar, where are they now? Meet in the middle? We're talking about witnesses in a trial. That seems like a pretty low bar to meet in the middle over.
If the will of the majority of the American people is relevant here, why don't we just wait for an election come November? This is different from Nixon. It's different from Clinton because we have an election coming up just a few months from now. Why don't we just wait, and the people don't want him in, they can vote him out?
You know, it's funny, David, because he is being tried on the incident in Ukraine, but that incident is of a piece with his corrupt behavior and his obstruction of justice since his first day in office. And in fact, I started the Need to Impeach movement in October of 2017. So when you delay for 2.25 years and then say, well, you know, the time's run out, it's kind of like, well, darn it, which way do you want to get me?
So you're a wealthy, successful investor. You were before the climate, before the impeachment issues, but not a traditional politician. You're one of two in this race, the other one being Michael R. Bloomberg, who is the majority owner and founder of Bloomberg LP. Is this a year for wealthy individuals who are not retail politicians to really have their way with the American people? Or is there more of a populist strain that goes more for the small guy, the everyman? Is there a role for Tom Steyer and for Mike Bloomberg in this race?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I say two things. One, if you believe the problem is a broken government that's been bought by corporations, I spent 10 years as an outsider fighting and beating those corporations. I've never lost. So if you think that's the problem, you have to ask yourself, is it an outsider who's been doing it for 10 years successfully, or someone from inside the Beltway who you're going to trust if that's the problem? And the second thing I'd say is this. I started one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States. I am the grassroots. I am the person who full-time has traveled around this country and gone door to door and registered kids on campuses and worked with our partners in the labor movement to knock on over 25 million doors in the last 2 cycles. If this is about being a grassroots person, I started one of the biggest grassroots organizations and I've done it full time.
What's your closing argument? Because in a sense, that's what we're making here in the Iowa caucuses. What's your closing argument when you go in and you talk to these people across the state of Iowa? What do you say?
I say, number one job, beat Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump is running on the economy. He has chewed up conventional politicians from the Republican Party in the 2016 primary, 16 of them. He beat the best prepared Democratic candidate ever, someone who'd been First Lady, Senator from New York, and Secretary of State. He's someone who's going to run on the economy, and if you can't beat him on the economy, you can't beat him. And I can. So in fact, what I say to people is, look, there are a lot of reasons why I think I'm the right person to be president, but I'm also the person who can make it to president, because I can go toe-to-toe with Trump and take him down. He's a fake. I'm not scared of him. He's a fake, and I can show that on national TV, and I can make him lose.
Is he a billionaire?
No. The question is his use of the presidency done enough for his real estate, and has he gotten enough money from foreign governments and American corporations because he's president for him to be rich? But this is a guy who's gotten bankrupt multiple times, who played a business person on reality TV. That's a little different from being a successful business person.